One of my close friends from college works with a lot of horses, and she owns one of her own. That's not the start of a cool anecdote. I just need a segue to the analogy of carrots and sticks, which is a metaphor for the use of the combination of reward and punishment used to induce a desired behavior. Basically, if you want someone to do what you want, there's two ways to do it in politics. Those are reward good behavior or punish bad behavior. I'm a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and I happen to work for a nonprofit grassroots organization that uses more sticks than carrots, but every effective political movement has used both to varying degrees. A coherent strategy for influencing public policy requires being able to reward politicians when they do the right thing and punish them when they do the wrong thing. Both of these things can happen on the news, through campaign contributions, in approval ratings, and most importantly, at the ballot box. Now, a disclaimer, I don't like Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him. I don't like the things he said about women. I don't like his refugee ban. I don't like that his administration is cracking down on marijuana. I don't like that he's opposed to free trade. I certainly don't like his complete lack of presidential decorum. But I do like the fact that I get to keep over $600 of my money this year because of tax reform. I like that I'm no longer forced by law to purchase a product that I don't want because of the individual mandate repeal. And I certainly like the growth of my investments over the past year because of the incredibly strong U.S. stock market. Donald Trump is an asshole. But I believe in giving credit where credit is due. And when he accomplishes things that are good, he ought to be commended for doing them. So an overview here. I'm arguing pretty straightforward. We should commend people when they accomplish things that are worthy of it. That Trump has accomplished things that are worthy of it, and therefore we should commend him for those things. So we're not debating Trump's personality. We're not debating his politics. We're not really debating his job performance overall, whether we like him on the aggregate. We're not debating the nuances of a single policy on its own, like the tax bill or what have you. Though as a quick plug, I will say I'm always down for an in-the-weeds policy debate. Just slide into those DMs. What we are debating is, has Trump accomplished anything? And if so, should we commend him for accomplishing those things? And I think there's a very strong, very simple case to be made for both of those. And I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Okay, yep. So straight out of the gate, I'm going to try and change the victory condition for my opponent here. I don't think it's good enough to just show that Trump has accomplished literally anything. So, for example, as a few points of principled objection, would you, for example, commend Trump if the ratio of his success to non-success was like 1 to 1 million? So he's accomplished one thing, but had 1 million failures. Would you still commend him?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what the actual language debate is calling for, yes. I mean, with any politician, any person, you want to commend them for their success, and you want to go after them hard, verbally, and forcefully when they do something that's wrong.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest two things. The first thing is that this definition of commend is stupid. I'm going to think about the social definition of commend. Think about when you commend people in other fields, what does it mean? When you commend a student, when you give them something such as a valedictorian, you're recognizing that they not only did some things right, but they also excelled, right? They exceeded their peers in a way which is worthy of commending, right? To point out that they stuck out and did something better. There are students, for example, who pass, and that's not to say that you don't give them any form of congratulation, right? Like if they pass most of their subjects, they get their degree. But by my opponent's logic, any student who passed a single course, even if they failed every single other one, will be worthy of some sort of commending. To me, that's silly. Second analogy would be like a Nobel Prize. You don't just give a Nobel Prize for anyone who's done anything. You commend people if they go above and beyond. Similarly would be military awards and decorations, right? All military personnel who don't break the rules of war are doing a great service, but you wouldn't commend literally all of them. You reserve those awards and you reserve those decorations for those who excel above and beyond, who don't just have a kind of a good track record, those who have a great track record. And I think it's analogous to presidents here. So what I'm going to say there is to say that when you just commend people for anything they do well, doing the carrot stick thing, which my opponent's talking about, you actually undermine the very integrity of the commendation in the first place. Because what value is commending someone if it can be given to any schmuck who does one good thing out of 1 million, as my opponent said he would commend for? So the whole carrot and stick doesn't work at the point which your commendation isn't worth anything. Thus, you shouldn't commend like that. What I'm going to suggest instead is the following. One, I'm going to try and prove to you that presidents in general do not deserve commendation for doing their job. They are public servants and not people who deserve prizes. Secondly, I'm going to prove that Trump, given his given the Russian investigation, shouldn't be commended because that commendation could be seen as ill-gotten gains. And then lastly, I have a few examples of the things which Trump supposedly did, and I'm going to show that those are either not accomplishments or that they weren't Trump's accomplishments, but rather the accomplishments of the Republican Party. Pass it quickly over to my opponent if he has any objections to those things.
All right. So first of all, the definition of commend is to praise, formally or officially. There can be different connotations depending on the context. He mentioned students, right? We do commend students for passing classes. We commend everyone in the military that stays in long enough through promotion, through performance evaluations. My dad's a member of the United States Air Force, and he does that pretty frequently. We commend everyone that is able to do their job well. So on the topic of doing their job, right? That this doesn't really hold water either, right? It's nice in theory to say that you shouldn't praise someone just for doing their job, but we don't say the same thing about waitresses or about your child's teacher in school, right? They're just doing their job too. And it's not unreasonable to say that as a general principle, we ought to commend people when they do something well. Now, I'm sure we'll get into the ill-gotten gains, the Russian aspect of it later. That'll be interesting. But in terms of, okay, what has Trump actually accomplished, right? Accomplishment is defined as something that's been achieved successfully, otherwise the successful achievement of a task. And there's a whole laundry list of things, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum. If you're conservative, you probably like tax reform. You like the individual mandate repeal. You like the ending of Title II classification of the internet. You like Neil Gorsuch being nominated to the Supreme Court and 12 other federal judges. You like the at least 15 different regulatory cuts that the president signed after pushing them through Congress. You would like withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement. You would like the executive order that speeds up the infrastructure approval process. You would like the approval of the Keystone Pipeline. You'd like the increase in defense spending. You would like pushing back ISIS. You would like the executive order that Trump put on healthcare, which I've debated on QallOut in the past. You would like his policy of eliminating 2 regulations for every 1 new regulation. That's been good for the economy. You would like that he undid a lot of Obama's executive orders, and you would like that he has made efforts to cut government waste. Now, if you're a liberal, you probably like that Donald Trump pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You probably like that he signed bipartisan women's STEM promotion legislation, which was co-sponsored and carried by Democrats. You probably like that he has gone after the Syrian government after Assad used chemical weapons on his own people. You probably like the fact that he was able to broker a deal with Democrats in Congress to get hurricane relief passed over the objections of many Republicans. You would have liked that he's called for an audit of the Pentagon. You would like that he has taken extensive action on the opioid epidemic. And you would like the fact that he's arrested over 3 times as many human trafficking victims. As many human traffickers as Obama. And then in terms of economics, there's 1.7 million new jobs created in the last year, unemployment of 4.1%, 3.2% GDP growth, which is a big number for non-policy wonks out there, a 17-year high in consumer confidence. All 3 American economic indices have hit record highs during 2017. Obviously, to claim that the president is single-handedly responsible for every single one of those things would be an exaggeration. Economic indicators alone are not evidence of a successful presidency in and of itself, but he has had a measurable impact in countless ways in many different areas of policy, and they've been good.
Okay, first thing, whether we should commend people in the first place just for doing their job. And I want to stress here that if he doesn't prove this to be false, then the debate is over, even if Trump did accomplish those things, right? What my opponent did is actually subtly shift the goalposts. He said, well, we would commend waitresses and things if they did their job well, but the standard of well, as he put out at the beginning of the debate, is just in the list of things they did. If they did a single one right, even if they did everything else wrong, that would qualify as well. So by his own definition, you're commending literally anyone who did anything right. The waitress could have spilled your drink, should have given you the wrong meal, but if she gave you a nice smile, then that's one thing, right? That qualifies as doing the job well and is worthy of commending. So put this to apply to Trump. It's silly, right? It means that the commending isn't worth anything. So it fails to operate as the carrot and stick he talked about. So I don't think presidents should be commended for doing their job. They're public servants. Another great example of where this shouldn't have happened was when Obama was given the Nobel Peace Prize, despite not really doing anything other than, shifting the Overton window a little bit, right? Like, that was stupid. Obama hadn't done anything. He'd just been in the place. Anyone else in there could have done that. And that is the same thing for Trump. Second thing, why I think at this particular time commending is a silly idea. Trump is currently under investigation for collaborating with Russians and in a effort to, we don't quite know yet, undermine the democracy, whatever. The point is that as long as someone's under investigation, you wouldn't commend them then, because the commendation would look pretty stupid in retrospect, right? For example, you wouldn't commend a valedictorian who is currently under investigation for plagiarism. You wouldn't commend someone with a Nobel Peace Prize if it was under investigation if their work was stolen. Neither would you, for example, commend a military service person if they were currently in military court for some sort of abuse. The point is that you should at least wait until their name has been cleared. You shouldn't commend people while their names are under investigation. Otherwise, you're commending ill-gotten gains, which obviously don't deserve commending. Second point, why I don't think many of the things which you're talking about can actually be attributed to Trump. So, for example, right, The Supreme Court. Why isn't Merrick Garland in the Supreme Court right now? Because the Republican Party stalled the nomination well beyond the ordinary in order for the next president to be able to install somebody. Neil Gorsuch was not Trump's pick. It's not like the Republican Party hadn't thought of anyone, was thinking, Jesus, who are we going to nominate? We've been stalling for no one. And Trump came in and said, I've got this guy, Neil Gorsuch. Trump had no idea who that person was until the Republican Party informed Trump of that he should sign off on that person, which is characteristic of most of the things we're talking about here. Trump didn't engineer these things. It's not like net neutrality was something the Republicans, didn't like until Trump thought of it. It's not like Republicans haven't thought of cutting regulation until Trump thought of it. It's not like the Republicans didn't even want tax reform until Trump thought of it. All of these things are part of the Republican policy platform, and the Republican Party handed those things to Trump. There wasn't a single thing Trump is worthy of commending for here. It's all just the Republican Party. So I guess you could commend them if you want, but that is not Donald Trump. And so he should not be commended for achievements which are not his own.
So on the topic of the Peace Prize, good point. We shouldn't commend people for not doing anything, right? Just being elected president isn't an accomplishment. Well, it is an accomplishment, but it's not one that's worthy of commendation in and of itself, as a general rule, especially in regards to the Nobel Prize. Now, Trump's name is not going to be clear to many people's minds, no matter what this investigation finds or doesn't find. First of all, because partisanship is a thing, and we'll get into that more later. But the whole idea that we can't commend somebody when they're under investigation for something, that's not how this works at all. You're innocent until proven guilty. Furthermore, imagine a case where someone, steals a car and in the process saves a child, right? Or what have you, right? Think of the trolley problem. Think of whatever you want. There are all sorts of situations where someone can come up with a good act, right? We're not looking at someone's own and say, oh, well, he's a murderer. Like, yes, he saved a child, but he stole a car. And so therefore we can't praise him for saving the child, right? That's not how this works at all. The idea that, okay, this is a stolen nomination in terms of the Supreme Court, that's not out of the ordinary. There are plenty of cases in the past where when a Supreme Court justice has passed away or left office in the last year of a previous administration, it is actually more often than not the next president fills it. But even if you want to go that far, right? Either way, having an idea and implementing them are two very different things. Ideas are not accomplishments. Action is. Right. So, yes, the Republican Party was instrumental in these things happening, but they would not have happened without Donald Trump being in the position that he was. Now, you could have said, OK, maybe another Republican president in there would have done some of the same things, and I probably wouldn't disagree with you. But the fact remains that there is one Republican that actually is in the Oval Office, and that is Donald Trump. And so the things that they've been able to accomplish by virtue of having Donald Trump where he is means that he has played an instrumental role in actually accomplishing those things. Back on the topic of carrots and sticks, right? What happens if you only use a stick and never use a carrot, right? Why would a horse go the way you want it to if you're only going to hit it with a stick no matter what it does, right? Trump, like most politicians, as we've seen, is very shallow, pays attention to what people think of him. Don't you think that if we commend him for doing good things, he will want to do more good things? We need to be able to back up from the partisanship and polarization, which is what gave us Trump in the first place, by the way. And we need to return to actually being able to evaluate people on their individual actions on a case-by-case basis, right? I liked things about Obama. I disliked things about Obama. I like things about Trump. I dislike things about Trump. And when we decide to categorically say that somebody either deserves it or doesn't, on the whole, instead of actually looking at their actions individually, you eliminate the ability to have any kind of nuanced discussion. And you almost always end up contributing to even more polarization, which ends up creating a cyclical effect, which makes it worse for everyone involved.
So I'm by no means saying that you should, be dishonest if you're polled on a particular policy issue as to whether you thought tax reform was good or bad, that just because you hate Trump. I'm just saying that you don't have a positive duty to go out and commend and sing their praises just because they did something which you agree with, especially when you take into consideration the rest of their track record. Commending is not the same as appreciating. Think about the way we use commending in other contexts. You've given me no reason why the presidency should be distinct. So first thing, I'm just going to point out that he has not proven the first thing you must prove, which is that presidents in general deserve commending simply for doing their job, right? They are public servants. They opted into this, right? It's not like they had to be the president. Trump could have just lived his life. They put themselves forward to serve the people. They shouldn't claim credit for the people's achievements, right? They haven't done anything more than any other regular person. They've just taken on a duty, and if they just do the duty in a pretty mediocre way, they don't deserve any commending for it. He hasn't proven that. Second thing, ill-gotten gains. So he says that that Donald Trump's name will never be cleared. I disagree. I think if the special counsel comes through and clears him of all wrongdoing, his name is cleared, and then at that point you should then consider it. But that hasn't happened, so you should not consider commending him yet. Secondly, the principle of innocent until proven guilty is irrelevant, because I'm not suggesting we should just preemptively punish Trump. I'm just saying that you shouldn't go and congratulate him for things which might have been ill-gotten gains. So there's a clear difference between punishment and then positive appraisal. The last thing he said is that sometimes, there is collateral, and then I would just ask you what is acceptable collateral. So, for example, stealing a car to save a child might be seen as acceptable collateral. Giving away the democracy to a foreign government in exchange for some minor policy tax reforms, probably not acceptable collateral. I'll leave that in the audience's mind to judge. Next thing is, are the achievements Trump's? So my opponent says, well, Trump is in the White House, so he ultimately signs them. So they are Trump's achievements. I would say that any other Republican president would have done that. I would even say that even a Democratic president probably would have done it, right? Look to Bill Clinton's administration, for example. When you're a president and you've got a hostile Congress and a hostile Senate, the Senate and Congress gets to claim a lot of mandate from you. They get to say, well, look, we were elected sooner, or we are, the people's representatives, or look to the separation of powers. Laws are made not in the White House, not in the executive. They're made in the legislature. And many Democratic presidents have folded in the past. So I would even say that there's a good chance that even a Democratic president would have signed a lot of the things if they were supporting the House and the Senate. I would also, last thing, what are achievements? And this is one of the dangers of just kind of doing this carrot and stick nonsense. If you're just pandering to Trump's ego, then what's to say that the DACA reform doesn't happen like he said, right? He basically said to the Democrats, write me a legislation and I'll sign it. If you're just going to establish the norm that Trump should just respond positively to all forms of appraisal, then Trump actually ends up betraying his base and signing things which they didn't support just because the media congratulated him for it, which would be wildly principally inconsistent. And you should just commend people on actual excelling, not just, responding to it.
All right, so the idea that the president doesn't accomplish anything, you're kidding, right? You're going to say no president in history has ever accomplished anything worthy of commendation. Not freeing the slaves, not winning a war, not Louisiana Purchase, the Missouri Compromise, not toppling the Berlin Wall. If you think that Obama was a better president than Trump, and I'm sure you do, there's a reason for that, right? It's because Obama accomplished more than Trump did by whatever standards you use. There are people that believe the opposite for the same reasons. If no president has ever accomplished anything, then we wouldn't care who the president was. We would just vote for a blank party slate, right? But the fact that we do is because the president of the United States is the most powerful, influential single person on the planet and is able to accomplish a lot with that power. So you're going to say, oh, well, any Republican president would sign it. Maybe, but the way that Washington, D.C. works is that getting it through Congress is what's tough, and the president has to play an integral role in that, just like plenty of other people do. Legislation doesn't just happen. The president sets priorities, and the House and the Senate, especially when they're controlled by the same party, have to operate within the priorities that the president sets and the messaging that he wants to set out. It is coordinated. Donald Trump is absolutely the head coach and the quarterback of this team. In Congress and in terms of trying to get the legislative policy through. So when you talk about, oh, it's just the Republicans in general, you're ignoring the fact that, do you believe that there are a such thing as bipartisan accomplishments, or are they only when one party gets something done?
Bipartisan, but you're strawmanning my argument. I'm not saying that no president ever achieves anything. If a president, for example, uses the bully pulpit, gets out there and genuinely changes the hearts and minds of the American people and will do something significant like freeing slavery, like that's a really big deal. Are you really going to compare Trump's tax reform to freeing slaves, right? There's a clear differential in quality and influence there. And I think that should be recognized by commending one and not commending another. Because if you just commend all of them as all good things, then you're equivocating between what are clearly great achievements and things which are just not really that great of an achievement. As for presidents having power in the Senate, I agree, presidents do have to whip votes in the House and the Senate. I would ask you, how many Republicans do you think have changed their votes in the positive because of Donald Trump's influence? Because I can point to a few where they've definitely fleed him, right? Like John McCain voted against the Obamacare repeal almost exclusively because it was Donald Trump's policy, right? Here's another one. Where's the fucking wall, right? Like his whole thing was we're going to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. The Republicans in the House aren't even entertaining putting that policy forward, let alone voting on it. So again, if Trump was really someone worthy of commendation, then I would expect that policy to turn to something which is very popular and something which Republicans want to go for. So, and that's the same for a lot of the shopping list of achievements, which you kind of listed with very little detail at all, right? Like, regulatory cuts, which any Republican would have done. The Supreme Court, which is only open because the Republicans have stalled the nominations for so long. The Paris Climate Agreement, which the Republicans vowed they'd get out of no matter who was in presidency. You were saying Ted Cruz wouldn't have done that. ISIS, who was already on the downturn anyway, and it was largely the Iranians and the Syrians who had the boots on the ground. It's not like Trump approved any huge military surges of any strategic importance there. Healthcare reform, the entire Republican Party was basically primed to get rid of Obamacare from the get-go. Every senator and every Republican, there wasn't a single Republican out there who wasn't against Obamacare. And also, he hasn't even repealed it yet. So he's, if anything, scuffled that. Audit of the Pentagon, but he's also, appointed ex-military contractors to be the people who are doing the auditing. So good luck as to how that's going to go. Human trafficking, I don't think Trump deserves any commending for human trafficking arrests going up. He's not on the ground arresting people. Well, what has he done to increase that? It seems like the police deserve the commending there because they're the actual ones doing stopping the trafficking. At the end of the day, Trump hasn't done anything, right? I'm sure he's done he's overseen the successes of his party, but you need to show, in order for Trump to be commended, something which Trump was pivotal in the passing of, and not just someone who merely kind of stood there and watched. And furthermore, that this commending everything blindly isn't going to come with negative side effects. For example, Trump appealing doing democratic DACA reform on behalf of not his base, just because he received a bit of commending for it. I'll pass the mic again.
Great thing. So you said that no Republican would ever be for Obamacare, but just a couple of sentences earlier, you said that John McCain went against Obamacare because of Trump. So you can't blame partisanship for all of his successes and then say that, oh, there's nothing special about Trump, because any Republican would have done the same thing. The fact that Obamacare isn't repealed, the fact that there isn't a wall, means that there are differences between different Republicans within a party, right? They're not completely homogenous, and that's a good thing, by the way. Look, President Trump has to know if he's actually done a good job or not, right? That's why his public approval rating exists and why it's low, by the way. Right, you want to talk about the people will just move on, right? Benghazi proves, right, that the fervor that the right has had over Benghazi, right, is proof that when there's a scandal, a whiff of a scandal in the air, it's not going to go. People aren't going to say, oh, well, he's fine, Russia's fine, right? People that are into it now are going to stay into it into the future. The idea of acceptable collateral doesn't really go anywhere either, because you have to talk about, okay, what has Trump given up that is so awful that it counteracts the successes that he's had, right? Because I don't think you've pointed to anything that Trump has done that is negative. I mean, you said, okay, well, look, all these good things have happened, but, oh, well, Trump by himself didn't do all of those things, right? No president's ever done anything all by himself, right? But I'm sure that you would like, for example, the fact that Donald Trump pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, right? That is something that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren wanted him to do, and he did it, right? He went after Syria, right? Saving thousands of lives by bombing the Syrian government after Assad used chemical weapons on his own people. 30 out of the 48 Democrats in the Senate supported that, and so did Hillary Clinton, right? Trump passed hurricane relief, right, which he was only able to do because he didn't go with what Republicans wanted, because he went against them and went with the Democrats and struck a truly bipartisan deal. Again, saving lives and getting desperately needed aid out to the communities that needed them over the objections of his own party. He's taken action on the opioid epidemic. He's called for the audit of the Pentagon, right? And you can say, oh, well, some of these things aren't great. No, okay, you're going to cherry pick some of the bad things that have happened during his administration and lay those at his feet. But everything good that's happened, right? Everything good that's happened is the fault of somebody else, right? And this is, again, contributing to that partisanship that's saying, look, are you really going to sit here honestly and say that Donald Trump has literally not accomplished anything, right? I'm sure you disapprove of some of them, but are you going to say that everything Trump has done is either bad or he didn't really do it, right? No reasonable person can look at the laundry list of things Trump has accomplished on both sides and be unable to find a single thing that is even remotely beneficial, right? Unless their problem isn't really with Trump's accomplishments, but with Trump as a person, right? How much intellectual dishonesty is required to sit here and claim that every single president Donald Trump or anyone else took for a whole year was either negative or contributed nothing whatsoever?
I think this kind of desperation on your part is reflective of how low you think the burden is. If you I've never claimed that Donald Trump has done literally nothing. I'm claiming that everything significant, everything worthy of commending has not been his accomplishment, right? And seriously, like this debate, if this debate was Donald Trump has achieved something, then that would be the title. But you don't commend people for achieving one and having a million misses. Look to the other ways in which we use commending. You've given me no reason as to why the presidential context would be any different. So first thing I'm going to talk about is the healthcare thing. You're like, oh, you contradicted yourself because you said no Republican hated Obamacare, but when it went through, McCain voted against it. what that would suggest to me is that maybe a leader worth commending would take the unified approach. Of course, Republicans disagree as to how it should be repealed, but a good president, a good leader should be able to craft a deal which appeases everyone enough that they can get it through since they are a majority, right? Given that Trump couldn't do that, that doesn't seem like leadership worth commending. If anything, Trump has been alienating the bills which have the best chance of getting passed. So you would commend a leader, for example, who is able to build those bridges, whip the votes, as you said, right? Like show some leadership and be the quarterback, as you said, right? There's no quarterback if the team's peeling away from you. So Trump has undermined the success of his own policy, not worth commending. Second thing, it said that Benghazi never went away for Clinton, and that's like evidence that this thing will never go away from Trump. I reckon that there's a difference there, because Clinton had a Clinton Foundation and ongoing relationships with the nations in which she is talking about. So that never went away for her. But if Trump is really honest about this Russia thing and just has offloaded all of his financial interests, then it won't linger for him. Also, Republicans tend to linger on this stuff longer than Democrats do. So I don't think the Trump thing will hound him if his name is cleared. But the point is, even if he is innocent, you shouldn't commend him in the meantime until his name is cleared. Okay, next thing you said was the TPP. Okay, yeah, good one, right? So yes, he did. I will actually credit Trump with this. Trump pulled out of the TPP, right? He definitely did that. But is that really an accomplishment, right? Is pulling out of a massive free trade agreement between lots and lots of nations an accomplishment? And it's hard to, obviously, the ideological differences make it hard to judge standards here. But I would say that in general, Republicans, who Trump is supposed to be representing, are in favor of free trade, right? It's all about free market capitalism. It's all about, reducing, as you said, regulatory barriers, right? You were this one who said that reducing regulation is an achievement. It seems odd then that you would also say that increasing regulation and increasing tariffs is also an achievement. You can't have it both ways. What I would say is pandering to Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren is hardly something you would commend Donald Trump for doing. That's silly. The next thing you said is going after Syria in the aftermath of chemical weapons. Obama had already signed that, right? So that is standard, that the chemical weapons are the red line, and after it was crossed would receive punishment, was an Obama policy. He's just doing Obama's policy, not worth commending.
All right, so first of all, Obama didn't follow through with that red line. He moved the red line every time they crossed it. Trump was the one that actually followed through on it. That in itself is an accomplishment. Second of all, you said a minute ago, you said, okay, a commendable leader would be someone that could actually craft a deal that could get through and whip the votes to do it. I agree with you. You know what tax reform was? That was a place where Donald Trump crafted a deal and then carried it through and whipped the votes in order to make it happen. So if you're going to say that Trump isn't commendable because he couldn't get health care through, which was a big deal, and then say that he wasn't commendable because getting tax reform through didn't matter, right? That's another false standard, right? Now, again, pulling out a TPP, yes, it's an accomplishment. I actually disagree with it. I'm a huge free trade fan. I've debated that on Call Out as well. But different accomplishments appeal to different people because we're not homogenous. But like I said, if you're going to go after each of Trump's accomplishments one at a time, right, and you're going to say that everything that he's done has either been bad or it was good, but he had no impact on it, right? That's just not intellectually honest. It's contributing to the partisanship, the polarization, which again is how we got Trump in the first place. You have to be able to look at somebody holistically and say, look, they've done good things, they've done bad things. We should criticize them for the bad things and commend them for the good things, right? Again, the resolution isn't Trump had a successful year. Trump accomplished more good than bad. It reads he should be commended for his accomplishments, not for his performance, but specifically for his accomplishments. And the straightforward reading is that Trump has accomplished things, and he should be commended for accomplishing them. We're running low on time. I'll go ahead and let you finish out.
To be clear, you think that a fair burden for you in this debate is Trump has at least accomplished one thing?
Yeah. I mean, the straightforward reading of the interpretation is that when presidents accomplish something that is worthy of commendation, they should be commended for it. When they do something worthy of criticism, they should be criticized for it. That is our philosophy and what our approach should be to politics, and that's what's lacking.
Do you commend a student who failed every single one of their courses except for one?
Sure, yeah, I'd commend them for the one that they passed. Absolutely.
Would you commend a military service person who was dishonorably discharged but had like one good week in training or one good week in the field?
Like Chelsea Manning?
Yeah, sure. Would you commend that?
Sure, President Obama did.
Okay, so I think this is, look, if that's the standard, my opponent wins, but it's a silly standard because it betrays all of our intuitions about what the word commend means and the way it's all used. At the end of the day, many of these achievements any Republican president would have done, Trump is not really instrumental to any of them.
Look, the bottom line, any American, it's easy to point to an accomplishment of Trump's that deserves commendation, multiple ones. Can I point out, my opponent hasn't pointed out a single thing in the entire debate that Trump did that was bad. All he did is say all these good things happened, and maybe Trump wasn't the most responsible party in every single one of them. Okay. Tangible actions or accomplishments, right? The intellectual integrity of credit where credit is due and the political pragmatism of carrots and sticks are philosophically neutral ideas anyone should accept. I believe in giving credit where credit's due. And when anyone, including Trump, accomplishes things that are good, as he has, we ought to commend them for doing that. Thanks.